Well, I'm in Manchester today, and I've come to the suburb of Miles Platting to see the Phillip Park Cemetery. I've not been here before. It is rather a dull day, but at least it's not raining. We just pan round. A lot of care being taken of this grass, and over there is the War Memorial. Let's have a look at that first. In front is what is known as the Cross of Sacrifice. On the back wall we have some 9 panels with around 17 or 18 names on each panel. That's around 160 men who gave their lives both in the First World War and includes those in the Second World War. If you look at one at random here, Private W. Ellis, Leicestershire Regiment, 21st of December 1918. Moving across here, there are some names from the Second World War, with Gunner G.A. Akehurst, 1941, and some secondary panels down at the bottom there. So many fit men. Just one more name, Private W.H. Williams, Manchester Regiment, 1915. Well, I'm walking further into the cemetery. The path is splitting in two, and there are just so many memorials to view. We'll take the left path up a bit of a slope. There appears to be a chapel at the top. One on the right here is standing out with the angel with outstretched wings, although sadly she appears to have lost her arms. We come down to the base. Elizabeth, the dearly beloved wife of Benjamin Marsden, 1937, age 60. Now the cemetery is very well kept. The grass between the stones is mowed. Made a really good effort. It's difficult to know really where to start. There are so many memorials here. Very clear one here to read. Joyce, baby. The dearly loved daughter of Joseph H. and Charlotte M. Dolly Gosling, 1936, aged 2 years. And then her father, Joseph Henry, and her mother, Charlotte May. And you can get an idea of how many memorials there are, just stretching away into the distance there. And if I pan round, hundreds, many hundreds over that side. This would take days to explore. Now I'm seeing up ahead, obviously was a chapel of rest, but it is now derelict. It's got this protective metal fencing around it, and the windows are boarded up. Let's work our way round to the left of the chapel. There's one here, a circular one. Quite an interesting design, and it's recently been relettered. So we got our dear mother Hannah Jane Willan, 1937, in her 83rd year. And then we've got other Millans beneath. Alongside is Martha Alice Pemberton from 1962. There's just so many. It's amazing, and not only is the grass kept well, but the stones are all upright. There hasn't been a massive clearance, and that's partly due to the policy of the cemetery and also partly due to the fact it's using some pretty solid ground. Now I'm noticing a CWGC headstone down here, so let's have a look at the name on this one. This is A.C. Shepherd, Royal Garrison Artillery, 20th of Jan 1919. It's quite amazing the amount of grass cutting involved in keeping this cemetery like this. And it's obviously done regularly because the grass is in pretty good condition, despite the troughs and hollows where graves have sunk over the decades. Let's just pick another one at random. There's one here, lettering looks clear. William Hamnet. He died in 1911, aged 70 years. And then Sarah Jane Withington, formerly Leyland, daughter of the above. She died in 1906, aged 46. It's passed between the gap of these stones. Here's one to William Barclay, who departed this life in 1903, aged 56. And other members of his family beneath. This one's well decorated. On the top we've got the roses going around a harp. We don't see many harps on gravestones. George M., the husband of Margaret Hobson and beloved son of G.A. and E.A. Hobson, 1917. Moving back a couple of rows, I'm seeing another CGWC headstone. This one is Second Lieutenant A. Hanley, Durham Light Regiment, 24th of May 1918. Over here I'm seeing a very small stone close to the ground. Now is it a stone or is it just a grave marker reserving? No, it's a child's grave. Stanley Minor, who died in 1904, aged 10 months. And underneath it says also William Minor. I've reached a higher part of the cemetery grounds, and you can get a view of how many memorials there are stretching away down there in the distance. And then up here a little further up the hill are many, many, many more. A little bit of machinery noise in the background as they're keeping the grass neatly mown. I'm seeing quite a few of the CGWC headstones, but you would expect that with 160 names on the panel we saw as we came in. Presumably we'll find headstones to most of those in the graveyard. Let's have a look at the three I can see in front of me. This is A. Dalton, Royal Artillery, 1943, aged 31. So that's the Second World War. This one is facing round the other way. So we just come across. We see J. McGrogan, Royal Artillery, 1941. And then just across the way, G. Gale of the Grenadier Guards, 1941. And underneath it says, the family have added this, also Ernest Pearson, 1934, aged 59, and his wife died in 1967. Not quite clear what their connection is, obviously a family connection somewhere. This one stands out, it's very clear and it's got a number of names on it. Henry Sutcliffe, 1927, and then his wife Catherine Sutcliffe, Jane Sutcliffe, aged 13, Thomas, aged 1 month, Thomas again, aged 45, and then Martha, relatively recently, aged 76. Now, whether they're all buried here is unlikely. They're just being remembered here. I don't think the plot is going to be big enough for that many people. And another one where they're just remembering the names of members of the family. They won't be buried here. Mary Harrison, Charles Arthur Harrison, Norma Harrison, Lillian Bennett, Doris Donnelly, Florence Harrison and John Donnelly. 7 names, and all relatively recent. Now this headstone has 2 names mentioned in it. Probably brothers, I would think. Lance Corporal A.E. Rands, Royal Army Service Corps, and then a volunteer, A.E. Rands, who died roughly a year later from the Home Guard. And then underneath there is a metal plaque, Albert Edward Rands family. And then it talks about Albert Edward, their oldest son. So that's the 2 A.E. Rands we see on the white stone. And it mentions another 4 or 5 names right down to the bottom right hand corner. Stephen Gregory Rands, who's a farmer in Australia. 7 grandchildren and 13 great-grandchildren. Well, I've walked a couple of 100 metres further into the cemetery, and now we can see, stretching away in this direction, hundreds upon hundreds more stones. And I can see in the near distance about 12 CWGC stones. I'm not going to be able to see them all. As you'd expect in a city like Manchester, this is one very big cemetery. I have done 2 other cemeteries in Manchester in the past, and they too were overwhelmingly large. Let me just wander across to this headstone. Oh, that's nice and interesting. Sergeant J.R. Egan, Glider Pilot Regiment, Army Air Corps, 1945. And underneath, dearly beloved only son of JR and Gwendolyn Egan, dear daddy of Sylvia. It doesn't mention his wife. He's got a child, Sylvia, and he mentions his parents. There's a story there. One just over the back while we're here. Leading aircraftsman A. Mastin, Royal Air Force, 1945, age 39. Now, the cemetery is still being very much used. We can see this row here, a lot of them with flowers on, which tell us that they're within living memory. Now there's one to somebody from Israel, a mother in Israel. And they stretch away into the distance. Now, along the central path, there are a couple of places where they put up information boards about the nearby graves, presumably. This one concerns Scarface Alf, a policeman, 1920s and 30s in this area, Alf Foster. Then Abel Haywood, the man who built the town hall. And then it talks about more than 20 people celebrating a Christmas party were killed in a bomb blast in Miles Platting. And I assume they're commemorated somewhere in this area. Well, it's a shame that it's such a dull day. Everything looks so much nicer when the sun is shining. Now, if any of you are wondering why it's called Miles Platting, this area, according to what I read, platting means a bridge over a stream, and miles refers to the fact that that bridge was 1 mile from the centre of Manchester, and hence we get the unusual name for this area of Miles Platting. I see another CGWC stone down there, and we're just coming up to 3 more of these information boards about the nearby graves. Did you know? Talks about Manchester United, one of the 2 great Manchester football clubs. Next to it, Frank William Crossley, trained to be an engineer in the engine works of Robert Stevenson. And then about a footballer famous in his day, Sammy Cookson, seen by Manchester City and played for them in 1920. I guess he'll be quite pleased with their recent performance. Well, I do hope the camera's showing you how many stones there are, and the inscriptions are pretty good to read. We just stop here. Israel, the son of Israel and Anne Daniels, 1872, age 16. And then Alice Hannah, and then Anne Daniels, and then at the bottom the name Joseph. Now this one has lost its bit on top, but you can still got the inscription here. This is a large grave to members of the Pendlebury family. This one to Sarah, the wife of John A. Shaw, 1901. And here we've got Isaac Halliwell, 1902. And alongside this very large grand stone, right in the next plot, is two people with a very modest little stone. Alfred Lear, 1903, and Annie Lear, 1947. I'll just see this one round the corner. William John, husband of Mary A. Sissy Jones, 1942, and then Mary A. and Ethel, aged 6.5 months, and Lily in her 12th year. Now we're coming up to 3 more information boards. I do like the way they've done this. Private George Stringer with the Victoria Cross. Then a fireman's funeral, Samuel Dawson. And then Private Joshua Hodge. Now this is a tall one with an angel on the top, with her head bowed very far forward. She has lost her hands over the years. This is the memorial to members of the Hamnet family, and the first name is Sarah Ann Hamnet. She died in 1915. And back towards the entrance we came in on. 3 more of these information boards. The Bartley family, who perished in the Lusitania in the First World War. That was torpedoed off the south coast of Ireland. Terrible catastrophe. The German submarines believed it was carrying weapons to support the British, despite it carrying very many civilian passengers, and so it was torpedoed and went down. Private William Jones, that's another VC. And then Alfred Ball died from injuries fighting on the Somme on the first day of the Battle of the Somme, when the men were ordered to walk towards where the machine guns were supposed to have been destroyed, but they weren't. On that first day, some 25,000 men died, just mown down by the machine guns, which were intact, walking towards them as they were commanded. A terrible tragedy. Well, I think you'd have to go a long way to find a large cemetery better kept than this one. I haven't seen any toppled gravestones, and the grass is beautifully kept, and it's a pretty large area to maintain. So very top marks to the keepers of Phillips Park Cemetery, and you really ought to come and have a look at this if you're in the area in Manchester or Miles Platting. On a sunny day it will be even more impressive than what you're seeing now. Well, I'm going to draw it to a conclusion there. Hope you found it interesting. So till the next time.